Hi everyone, today we're going to show you how to break down a whole bone-in pork shoulder for various dishes and to get various cuts of meat here. And today our goal is we're going to show you how to get great cuts of meat for tasio. Here's a couple of them, and the thickness of these are great because the flavor will penetrate and the marinade will penetrate and they'll cook fairly quickly. We have here a very large piece of meat that's rather lean, not necessarily ideal for tasio, but very great for stir fry because you just use our velveting technique for stir fries. And we have small little pieces that, again, you could throw these on the grill for tasio, or you could chop them up and grind them up into ground pork, or just cut them into bite-sized pieces for stews. And here, I know a lot of you folks can't get pork belly, whole pork belly, but this is very similar to pork belly. It's got the skin, it's got the layer of fat, it's got some nice meat on it, and it's perfect for Shanghai pork belly and other pork belly dishes as well. And maybe the best part also is you get some nice soup bones for stock, and even some skin here that you can make aspic for soup dumplings. So I've showed you all these cuts of meat. Let's get to it and show you how to break it down. All right, so today we're going to break this pork shoulder down into usable parts, and it's really economical because this pork shoulder is about 9 pounds. $1.50 a pound, so about a little over $13, and we're going to get a lot of cuts for tasio and stir fries and ground meat even. So as you notice, there's a big bone here on both sides. It's kind of like for pernil, but you know, like I said in some of my previous posts, it's pretty obvious, and the meat will show you where to start cutting. And you can already see, if you turn this over, that you've got a little bit of membrane over here, and you just slowly start spreading that apart, like so. And you're going to need a sharp knife here. A sharp chef's knife will do. And you see this. Follow the membrane. And at this point, you're going to have to cut through the skin. Okay. And this is totally worth it, your time here, because you're going to have pork bones for stock, you're going to have meat for tasio, or anything else, any kind of stewing meat. And people shy away from this because it's a little bit of a big job, but totally worth it. And you can see I'm just following the membrane here. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a membrane piece right here, and you just follow it and just slice into that membrane piece, and it just separates naturally. And there's a little bit of tension here. If you put a little tension on it, if you move this, stretch this membrane a little bit, put a little tension on it, now you can start seeing the bone, the big bone here, and just cut along the bone. And expose the bone. Watch your fingers, be careful. You see this. So the idea is to expose the bone, you can see here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut underneath the bone after we expose it. And take your time, especially if this is the first time you're doing this. I remember when I was doing this in the restaurant, it took me a long time to do it the first time. My father instructing me on the side. See this big bone here. Okay. And you can see it's kind of like see that tension there, and you cut a long bone. Almost get underneath it here. I don't know if you can see that. Just like so. And I can almost lift this thing with the bone here. So I'm gonna actually get underneath the bone. See that with the knife, and just sort of cut up. And already you have this bone here. And don't worry about it if, you know, you kind of, if it's a little messy, if you kind of butcher it a little bit. No pun intended. But it's okay. You're gonna have plenty. The way I see it is, the more meat you leave on the bone, the more you're gonna have in your stock or your soup. Make a nice pork bone congee with this. Okay. So now I got this other bone. It's a little bit of a weird angle bone. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. I'm doing is just cutting around this bone, getting under it. Another cut here. Do the same thing, up. And start cutting it down. See that it's almost apart, and you can lift the bone like I'm doing, and then the meat will fall in its place. One last cut, and there it is. This is the bone that you're going to use in stock, and you can actually use a cleaver knife and crack this bone for your soup. Cut along these tendons, but we'll deal with that later. But what you've got here now is this very big piece of meat here. You've still got the skin on the other side. You make chicharron, you can do whatever you want. You've got a roast here you can do, or you can now continue to break this down. So now that our pork shoulder is deboned, we have to decide actually what kind of cuts we want from this. So there's a nice big piece of meat here that's perfect for Chinese barbecue pork or char siu. There's also another nice fatty piece here for the same. We trim off some of this fat. And if you notice with the skin here, this is kind of a little bit like pork belly. So we can actually cut a little piece here and use this for stewing to make you know, Shanghai style pork belly. And you know, a lot of these scraps and pieces we can use for ground meat, but even these pieces like this is great for stewing, and pieces like these are great for slicing up for stir fries. But what we're going to do today is we're going to primarily break this down for barbecued pork, and a little bit for stir fry, and the rest of the bits and pieces we're going to use for ground pork and make some dumplings. And we're going to leave a portion of the skin. Actually, I'm going to give this to Judy, and she's going to save this, and she's going to make soup dumplings out of this. So let's get into it. So again, if you take, it looks unapproachable, but you take a look at this, and again, it's going to teach you what to do here. You see these seams, right? I'm going to do the same thing, and you just sort of peel it apart. You can see the way these seams here, these thick seams, and you sort of put a little tension on it, and you use your knife and separate it. And this is what my father used to say. He's like, hey, the meat actually will tell you exactly, it'll show you the way on how to cut this. So now I'm cutting through the skin. And I'm going to cut down to the skin. And where I hit the fat, stretch this out a little bit. And here's one piece for Tasio, and we're going to process that in a minute. And we'll continue here and take another here's another seam right here. And you can see the muscle membranes. And I'm using the tip of my knife. It's very sharp. You always got to be careful. And you see that, how the way I'm pulling it? Put a little bit of tension and it makes it easy to cut. Pull the meat away, cut, and then take a look at it. You can see right underneath the skin. Pull it away, and there you have another piece right there. Now that's a great piece for Tasio right there. And this little nub, I'm just going to cut this off. Great for stewing. Or maybe even on the grill for Tasio. Now we've got the skin left here, we've got plenty of fat, and we got this small piece here. And again, this piece would be ideal, and you know what, I'm going to show you. I'm going to do this actually. We cut this piece of skin off because for Shanghai pork belly, you absolutely want the skin. So this, I'm just going to roll this up here, put this off to the side, and this is going to be for you can put this directly into soup, where that's going to make a nice stock for the soup dumplings. Okay, and here we've got again the membrane here. I'm going to stick my knife through here, cut off a little bit of a piece here, and I got another little small piece. And this is what I was talking about. This looks just like a piece of pork belly. A lot of fat. And if you look at this side, a lot of fat here. So I'm just going to take along this, again, membrane here. So I'm going to flip this over and cut along this membrane here. You can see, I want to show you where I'm cutting with the membrane here. And then you see this thin piece, and I'm just going to cut right along the side here. Lift. And this almost is a perfect piece for Tasio. And this has a lot of fat on it, and that's what you want. We'll trim a little bit of this off. And now you have this right here. I want to show. This looks like a pork belly. It's not pork belly, but this is very good for making your pork belly a skin-on pork belly. So you've got that. And I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to trim off this fat. Put that aside. And this piece is perfect the way it is for Tasio. Or I could cut it into two small pieces as well, like that. And this is a good thickness. I don't know if you could see this for Tasio, good thickness, because the marinade will get right in there, and it'll roast quickly, but it's got enough fat and membrane on the outside, so that it'll be very juicy. And this is like a nice little nublet. You can, we'll clean this up a little bit. Trim this. Put that aside, but again, this is a nice little nublet for Tasio. You can make this for Tasio. And for these big pieces for Tasio, you can cut along the side here. Make elongated pieces that you see when you buy it in Chinatown. It's another elongated piece. And this is a leaner piece, and this is what really, you could use this for tasio, and what I would do is I would cut it like this and butterfly it over, like you see in some of the pictures. But actually this piece I'm going to save and use this for stir fry. I'm going to slice it and probably put this in the freezer to make it firm it up a little bit so it's really easy to slice, and probably trim some of this fat off and make a nice pork stir fry. And there you have it.